chair of the Norfolk Select Board, permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Anita Mecklenburg?
Here.
Cece Van Tine?
Here.
Anita Mecklenburg? All right, let's try that one more time without the echo in my office. Staff, when I call your name, please respond to the affirmative. Blythe Robinson?
Here.
Don Clark?
Here.
Chris Minchell? I think she can hear us. Todd Lindmark?
Here.
I'm here.
Thank you very much. Good evening. This open meeting of the Norfolk Select Board is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all open meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Obviously, this meeting is being recorded and streamed this evening, so if anybody does share your screen, please be careful in what you are showing, as that cannot be undone. With that, Blythe, would you be so kind as to take us through our very short agenda this evening?
Yes, I'll be quick about it. The only item on the agenda tonight is a public hearing to consider and vote the use classification of all properties in the town for fiscal year 2021.
Thank you very much, Blythe. And I do believe that we have a presentation prepared.
We do. Don is here and he's ready to have, if you can enable screen sharing for him, he's ready to show the presentation that was in your packets.
Fantastic. Welcome, Don. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well.
All right, so let's see. I go over here. I click on this. I say, make co-host maybe? Let's try that.
That'll work.
There you are.
All right, so share screen. Are you able to see the screen now? Perfect. Okay. Let's see. How can I move these? Shoot. All you people are in my way. Oh, I gotta drag this out of the way. Okay. All right. I'd like to start by saying thank you to the board, to the select board tonight for having me. Mostly because of undue circumstances with the DOR, I wasn't able to get ready for the December 1st meeting, so I apologize for that. As you guys already know, my assistant assessor, Chris Minchell, is available also tonight. And so the focus of tonight's meeting is going to be to decide whether to continue with a single tax rate or go to a split tax rate, and whether or not to consider offering any other exemptions. The town of Norfolk currently has 93% residential, 5% commercial and industrial, and 2% personal property. Due to these percentages, splitting the tax rate will put a heavier burden on the commercial industrial properties in town with minimal relief to the residential properties. It is important to remember that the majority of the personal property taxes that are paid within the town are also paid by the commercial and industrial properties as well. Therefore, a shift would have even a larger impact on our local businesses, which in turn could influence some of the commercial and industrial businesses to leave the town. So the focus of the classification hearing tonight is for the select board. The select board must hold a classification hearing each year to consider the tax rate options available to the town under the property tax classification. The Board of Assessors will make a recommendation to the select board whether to establish different rates among the major property classes, the residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property. Setting the values. The assessed residential value is based on a comparable sales market analysis. The assessed commercial value is based on income expense as well as comparable sales analysis and cost analysis. The Department of Revenue annually approves the adjusted values proposed by the assessing department. There are over 4,000 properties in the town with hundreds of distinct components that make up the assessed value. In order to keep this data as fresh and accurate as possible, the assessor's office this year will have reviewed over 200 sales from 2019 and have also compiled and evaluated income and expense information along with forms of list for all commercial properties. Setting the rate. Massachusetts statute requires the assessors to assess all properties at full and fair cash value as of January 1st of each year. Interim year adjustments are yearly adjustments from the market sales analysis during non-certification years. Full property reevaluation, also known as certification, is completed every 5 years. The town of Norfolk has just completed a 5-year certification for FY21. Your tax rate is derived from total taxable real estate and personal property, town meeting appropriations, state aid, town revenues, expenditures, new growth, debt exclusion, and overrides. What is new growth? New growth is assessed by tracking all construction, additions, and subdivisions throughout town. This past year alone, there were over 400 permits, many of which would require a visit to evaluate the work that had been done and then determining if these changes could be considered growth by the Department of Revenue's guidelines. This next slide is a glimpse back to our last certification in 2016. Certification years are a much more in-depth process. We have to look at all the data in the system, making sure it's calculating based on present time for construction costs and anything else that may have changed during the interim years. We then run multiple reports to prove our analysis. We work hand in hand with the DOR for approvals on any and all changes in the system. While these changes may increase property values, they are not allowed to be used for the growth you see in this chart. This screen represents the tax levy the town will have to raise in property taxes. This number comes from the total amount to be raised minus the total estimated receipts. This slide is a breakdown of the different classes and valuations and percent for each class. As you can see here, the residential has approximately 93% of the total value of the town. This is a breakdown of the impact of splitting the tax rate. There is a very small benefit to splitting the tax rate because of the lack of commercial and industrial in town. This is an example of the actual dollar amount that would be saved in red for the residential class with a split rate at 1.1, 1.3, and 1.5. Commercial and industrial properties would have to pay the additional taxes that are represented here in black. As you can see, there is very small savings in tax dollars to the residential class while significantly increasing the burden on commercial and industrial properties, possibly causing them to relocate to another town. There's also 3 exemptions tonight for the board to consider. The first one is an open space exemption. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 59, Section 2AB, states that the assessors must classify all real property within the jurisdiction into 4 classes: residential, open space, commercial, and industrial. The open space discount may reduce the amount of tax levy paid by the open space class by a discount up to 25%. Adopting an open space discount lowers the open space tax rate because of the amount of levy paid by that class is reduced. Those taxes are then shifted to the rest of the residential class alone, which means higher residential tax. The second exemption tonight is a small commercial exemption. Who is eligible? Sole proprietors, partnerships, no more than 10 employees. Total value of the property cannot exceed $1 million. Businesses must be certified by the Department of Labor, Workforce and Development. If a parcel has multiple tenants, all must be eligible businesses. The benefit, up to 10% of the commercial levy can be shifted from eligible parcels to non-eligible parcels. Things to consider. If owner occupied, the tax benefit goes to the property owner and not to the small business owner. It's difficult to track. Depending on ownership, the burden is sometimes shifted to other small business owners. At this time, there are only 15 towns out of 351 statewide that have adopted the small commercial exemption. The residential exemption. Adopting the residential exemption can shift the tax burden within the residential class from lower priced homes to owners of non-owner occupied second homes. The total tax levy of the class remains the same. The town of Norfolk is mainly owner occupied. The residential exemption is geared from cities like Boston and vacation areas like the Cape, where there are large amounts of rental properties. The residential exemption of up to 20% of the average assessed value of all residential properties may be granted to qualifying owner-occupied residents. Adopting the residential exemption is primarily for communities with non-owner occupied properties. The Board of Assessors is making a recommendation to the Select Board at this time to vote to adopt a single tax rate, to vote not to adopt an open space exemption, to vote not to adopt the residential exemption, and vote not to adopt the small commercial exemption. Contrary to what the general public may think, neither the Select Board or the Assessor's Office can raise or lower the tax rate. Spending is determined by the voting public through town meeting. It is the participation of the townspeople at town meeting that determines the level of services desired. This in turn directly affects the tax rate. The actual levy by the total assessed value multiplied by 1,000 will be the tax rate for 2021. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Don. Blake, was there anything you'd like to add before we get into a few questions?
Yes, I think, Don, that was excellent presentation. And just so you know, the motion that we've scripted for the board would not adopt any of those exemptions as we discussed last year. But I think it would be helpful, Don, if you could just give everybody an overview of what caused the tax rate to drop this year. I think I know the answer. I know you know the answer, but for folks the public there, to go from 1864 to 1803, what's different in 2021?
Okay. So first, the values in town have increased. And also we had received we went out and we hustled and we got quite a bit of growth this year as well. And those two factors, along with the facts that the Board of Selectmen and you have made the decision on spending this year to keep that under control as well, those three things all playing together, in a perfect world, keep everybody's tax rate down. Just for an example, the average assessed value of a single family home last year was $492,000, and the average tax bill was almost $9,200. This year, the average single family home was assessed $510,000, and the tax bill will be almost identical at $9,200. So
Okay.
tax rate down, values up, everything's on a perfect playing field at this point.
So it's an inverse relationship. The higher the value, the lower the tax rate if all other things are equal.
That's it.
Perfect. So I just wanted to start with that and then kick it back over to you, Kevin.
Sure.
Thanks, Blythe. So Don, I only have two questions for you, more for clarification than anything else, for those who may be watching or interested. The first is, previously, I believe we were told of a threshold that is kind of the common place for when a community should start considering a split tax rate. And you identified that currently we're sitting at a 93 residential to the rest being commercial, industrial, and such. What is the threshold that we would start considering or looking at a split tax rate?
You would want to have at least 10 to 15% of the town being commercial before you would consider it. I mean, you can consider it earlier. The only concerns are if you were to, it's not going to change much on the residential side. There isn't a benefit to it. And as most of my presentation pointed out, you could upset the commercial on the other side. So it has to really be 10 to 15% to be worthwhile.
Perfect, thank you. And the last one, you talked about the small commercial exemption, and I understand the nuances associated to such, but you did say that there were 15 communities that had adopted it out of the 351 in the Commonwealth. Are any of those 15 in our region or neighboring communities?
I'd have to look into that, to be honest with you. I don't know that sitting here right now. I can get that information.
No problem.
For you, though.
More of a curiosity than anything else.
Sure.
That's everything that I had. I'll toss it to the rest of the board for their questions and comments, starting with Cece.
Nope, no questions.
Thank you, Cece. Anita?
Oh, I just had one question. I'm new to this process, and so it just seemed like when you shared the slide earlier, only like less than 1%, like 1/3% is open space in Norfolk. And when I talk to people in town, they complain about we don't have enough business and the residents are paying all of the taxes, but they also love the small town nature and the open space and that part of. And I'm wondering if an open space exemption would allow us to encourage that for folks, or if that is something that we're not choosing to do for a different reason.
Well, you want my opinion, right?
Yes, I do.
Going back to the open space exemption, we have probably 7 properties in town right now that we're giving adjustments to at this point. And our open space in town is only assessed at $15,000 per acre. And they are also receiving additional adjustments on top of that for topography, if they're landlocked. So we do give benefits to property that can't be utilized. To go ahead and adjust the tax rate as well on top of that and give them another benefit, I don't think it would benefit us as much as, we give adjustments. In other words, the adjustments that we give now, I think are more than worth more than just over, I don't know how to put this. it would put more of a burden on the other residential property in town than it's worth to us, I think, at this point. If there is open space in town, we already are adjusting greatly for that. The only benefit to the open space, like I said, is it'll also have its own tax rate, but that burden has to shift somewhere else. So that burden would shift back on the residential property. So there isn't enough call for it in town for us to take that one into consideration at this time.
Okay,
I guess
thank
that's
you.
my best way of putting it. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Thank you, Anita. So in the absence of any resident participants this evening, we do have a couple of others on the call from Town Hall that I'm going to just poke and see if there's anything they'd like to add. Finance Director Todd Lidmark, anything you'd like to add, sir?
Nope, Don covered most of the items. With regards to the rate reduction, works out to be about a 3.27% tax rate reduction from 1864 of last year. And the average price for the houses works out to be about a 3.6% increase, which is what the adjustment is from last year to this year for those two numbers. Other than that, no, it did a great job. Again, revaluation helped out tremendously. We only budgeted 600,000 new growth. We got over 700,000. That helps out on a going forward basis as well. It also helps out with tax rate, as people are going to be aware of. So all good things, all positive in a economy which has not been fantastic. So I think this is good news for people.
Absolutely. Thank you, Todd. How about our treasurer, Anne Marie Duggan? Anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Well, we don't have anybody. I'm going to hope that nobody else just heard that high-pitched screech that came out of my earbuds, right? Okay, that's a good thing.
Oh my gosh.
But it sounds like we don't have any other questions or comments to cover. So I believe that opens us up to make some motions. So the first one is I will move that the board vote to adopt a single tax fiscal year 2021 and further not to adopt an open space discount, residential exemption, or small commercial exemption. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a second, do we have any further discussion? I'm hearing none, so we'll do a roll call vote. Kevin Calcutt, aye.
CC Van Tine, aye.
Anita Mecklenburg, aye.
And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you once again, Don, Chris. We really appreciate the work you put into the presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Blythe, that does it for our single agenda item this evening. Is there anything that you wanted to add before we log off for the evening?
I do. I just want to also thank Don and Chris. Vacation is a huge amount of work. And this year it was compressed into less time because we didn't pass the funds to pay for the outside consulting until late June. And then COVID. I can't imagine a more difficult situation, and they've come through it with flying colors and captured that new growth. So assessor's office has done a great job this year. I want to make sure everyone knows that. And then just looking forward on the calendar, we have 2 meetings next week. Tuesday the 15th is our regular meeting, and then a special meeting on the 17th for the police station presentation. So make sure that's on everyone's radar screen.
Thank you very much, Blythe. So like Blythe said, our next full meeting will be on December 15th. And then a couple of days later on the 17th, we'll be holding our police station project overview presentation. We did also post that if anybody has any questions they specifically want to ensure are addressed or touched on during the course of that presentation, please email them to either myself or Blythe, and we'll be sure that they're part of what we cover during that discussion. That being said, I think that's everything we have for tonight. Cece, anything else from you? Anita, anything from your perspective? All right, head shakes all around. With that, I will move to adjourn this meeting of the Norfolk Select Board. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a second, I'm going to guess there's no further discussion. We'll take a roll call vote. Kevin Calcutt, aye.
Cece Van Tine, aye.
Anita Mecklenburg, aye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Good night.